good to go. 1 second in. All right. Guys, I don't know if there's anybody watching because I don't know how to see those things, but we'll slowly let them trickle in as they come.
Yeah, I try to
slowly. But yeah, we're there we go. We got a little ticker. There's 4 people in here. But yeah, we're just gonna fire in any questions you guys have for us, anything like that. But for the most part, it's me, Packy. I got Jason Sterner joining me over that side, I guess. And we're just going to talk about how the tour has been going so far, what's working for us, what's not working for us, and some of the new products that we're coming out with. If we like any of them, hate them all, whatever in between. We'll tell you what works and what doesn't. But yeah, let's just start her off. How's the tour been going for you so far? Welcome first. But how's the tour been going for you so far?
The tour
front half of the season.
Yeah, the front half has been pretty good. So, it started off slow, I guess, at the Players. Definitely, since we had to incorporate a new spare ball, mine was always that purple hammer. And now that it's not an option, I've had to kind of sort through a few. Ended up winding on this Inu blue hammer. And so the first week, I definitely noticed some things were different, like the way the pins would fly off of it. So, it took me some time to kind of make those adjustments, but I got it going pretty well. So the next 4 weeks are pretty good. There's only 1 week where I was a little disappointed, I would say. But, for the most part, the season is going great. Close. I think I have 1 top 10 finish, 4 cashes, a couple of chances to make a show, just made some bad decisions or didn't do the right things as it got close to the wire. But all in all, pretty pleased. Obviously would want better, but excited and happy with what we got going on so far.
Yeah, so you think the biggest thing for you has really been the spare ball, new spare ball kind of threw it off at the beginning?
Yeah, for sure. I did just on my 1, 2, 10 combinations, I bowled the snowman doubles with Sim. And the first 5 I shoot, not saying I make all of them, but my percentage is pretty high on those. I kept sending the head pin around the 10 5 times in a row before I finally was well, maybe I should try to hit the other side of the head pin and kicked it off the wall. And I started talking to him about it. He's like, well, you think about it, in a sense, the purple ball, I guess, is softer. So the impact in the pin and the trajectory is definitely different.
And what were you throwing when you were having that issue?
This was that Envy blue hammer.
Okay, yeah.
I never really, I haven't thrown plastic at a spare in probably 20 years.
I'll say if you threw a plastic, the hardness range is it goes from 73 on the number to 85.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. To me, when I used to use plastic, when I threw it harder than I normally do now, I would hydroplane a lot of spares. So even with surface, I was still running into just the errant thing. So I wanted something that would kind of grab the lane through the front so I didn't have to be so perfect. And it tended to be a urethane ball. It was the Phantom before the purple hammer. And that was, probably 6 or 7 years of that. And then forced to throw this new option within a couple weeks. And so I've kind of noticed I've had to change not so much my speed now, but more of the angles of where I hit the pins. Maybe I have to move my eyes or 1 or 2 left to get the angles right. But it's trial and error. There's still marginal shots, but if I can improve those to me above 60%, I'm pleased, especially with the splits. So, but
absolutely.
I think that was the biggest hurdle to start. The other thing was noticing the differences in the blocks and how the guys were playing them and how it was changing. To me, I was a little bit behind the 8 ball with some of that in previous years. I would just keep trying to do the same thing and assume I would get the same results. And what I've noticed now is basically by block 3, everyone tends to have okay, I'm playing here or there. So the way it transitions the lane is a little bit different. So I feel if I don't move to one side of it or not, I kind of get stuck in that wedge. And then my execution can only go so far. I feel I'm fighting it. And everyone's just going around me. So I think, if I improve on that this last half of the season, I would be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I've had some similar issues, just block to block. It seemed so different for me where it's okay, well, one block, they're tight. The next block, they're hooking. The next block, they're hooking early and they're tight down lane. And it's just, for me, it's been more of just like a mental, like, I have to keep my options open because one block, this might work. And I come in with the same game plan and it's a completely different variation that I need to do. Like, I can still feel the pattern's the same. Everything's the same. It's just like the temperature outside went up 20 degrees. So now they're hooking early.
Yeah.
Or it rained during the break. So now, or that next morning we're bowling and it's cold outside again. And now it's tight, whatever it might be. It's just like thinking, okay, like you still have to play the same part of the lane, but you might have to get it done a different time.
Yeah, totally agree. That's something that I've kind of stumbled on the last few years. I just didn't know. I would always blame me first, just not executing today, or, I just bowl bad. But some of that not making those right decisions, like you're saying, or not being aware of them, would lead me into those tunnel vision type situations where no matter how good I was bowling, like I couldn't out bowl what I was trying to do. Like the guys are too good out there. You can't give them an extra 2 hits a game. That's not going to work.
Yeah, you can't give them the bad ball reaction. Just when everyone else has good ball reaction, you can't be like, oh, I'll just make better shots. Like, no, they already make just as good shots as me. It's just I'm not matched up now.
Yeah, that's frustrating too, because it's like that's such a double-edged sword where you got to take ownership, but then you got to be aware of what's happening too. So again, I've gotten better at it and in my understanding, but still, like, how can I get smarter? How do I make better decisions based on what I don't know is going to happen, like you said? And just planning for like block 3 when the inevitable, like, are they going to play here or here? And when they do, okay, how much is this going to change? Do I have the right balls? Did I do the right surface changes? Like, there's so many variables. It's hard to know if you're going to guess right, but you do the best you can, and hopefully they goes your way.
So you just take as many good guesses as possible and hope it all adds up to something.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess that, I start to see the same pattern with the guys typically. I mean, it's not, 100% guarantee, but I'm starting to see the same trend. So like, if I can just guess towards that trend on those certain days or those blocks, I've been able to make better decisions quicker. Because we only bowl 6 games, so it kind of feels like, well, I got to get it. I don't have time to wait to the end where we were bowling like 8 games back then. You got to get it done at 6, or you're already like 20 pins off the pace every game. So, that's tough. And, like you said, it's just educated guesses. You still got to execute.
You pile all the information together and you have a couple good guesses that you can make. You choose, you go from the top of the list to the bottom, and hopefully you don't ever get to the bottom of choices, because then it's been a tough day.
Yeah, you get stuck for sure.
So the biggest thing for you for like the switch, you think really just getting used to the spare game, getting a little more comfortable with, like, obviously new year, new players, new transition.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's that was the biggest, like I said, that was the biggest hurdle. And then the other thing that I've gotten a little bit better at is ball layout and choices, because my tilt tends to be higher than most of the guys on tour these days. So like when I would bowl at home, let's say like most of my pins were stock at like 5 inches or 4 3/4, and there was more friction at home. So like I would always see the pitcher the right way. And then like the last 5 years, or before the last 5 years, I would come out there with the same arsenal, and then I would be completely either in front of it or behind it the whole block. And I didn't realize that I needed to adjust to like the environment and like the amount of oil that we're using on tour versus at home. So like my layouts had to change with me identifying like how much different my ball roll was compared to the other players typically. So like I've gotten better at making educated guesses on the layout choices block to block and surface prep, that in the past it was just like, I don't know why I can't. I feel like I'm either going left or going right, and my box down lane has just gotten smaller and smaller. So that's definitely helped. And probably one of the biggest improvements or understanding within the last, let's say, probably 3 years. Definitely this last year, I've been able to kind of pinpoint like what's stock, and what's the long pin and what's in the short pin. And I really don't find myself using a lot of pin down stuff, but I think there are times when I should look at them. But I was always under the impression like without without a weight hole, like pin down balls are useless. And I think that was just an ignorant way of seeing it. But now that I kind of understand like the break motion and shape, I can use it for what it is, kind of like how I use your thing. So it's just a matter of, is it the right time? Do I try it? Do I want to waste 3 frames? It's like
I
either
was
or.
just saying for you, like with your, like you said, your tilt being higher up, like maybe those balls just shoot so far down lane and never hook where you're like, okay, well, like how many times as a player like you going to get to use that where you might be like, okay, instead of going so low that the pin is beneath my fingers and pinned down, maybe it's just like barely above my fingers, or I drill it in one of the fingers, something like that, where it's okay, it's still going to try and pick up. But yeah, I mean, John over here said he was going to ask you about your layouts when I saw you next because he noticed a new pattern. John Amico.
Is there a way to see the chat? Because I can't see this on my phone. I'm new to this.
It's just John Amico. I don't know, but he said,
okay, I know John.
He said he was going to ask you about your layouts because he noticed a new pattern, which, like you said, so that brings me to my question: are you drilling stronger pins, or are you drilling weaker pins to try and like adapt to how the lanes are being broken down and the new patterns, and kind of how you see your game progressing amongst the rest of them? Like you said, higher tilt. So where'd you go with your patterns?
I would say now, like standard for me is like 4 1/4, where it used to be like 4 3/4 to 5 inches. So earlier, the closer I can bring my break point to me, the bigger I can make my window down lane, because that's where I like to use speed to my advantage. So as long as my ball's reading and I can play shallower angles like I like to do, that's kind of the home run scenario for me. I think the only issue I get is like, let's say game 5 or 6, and it tends to only be so like on the shorter patterns, like where were we?
Was it Chicago?
The champ, not Mount. It was this one. It was the one Dave Small's place. We bowled on
Anderson. Yeah.
Anderson, yeah. So like there, I would get trapped in playing smaller angles where like I could see the guys hooking it, but it didn't look like it was that extreme to me until I realized like the last block that I'm like, oh my God, like my angles are way too, like, let me just open them up and like see if I can use the friction to the right. Then like the old me who would see earlier balls like that where it would burn up and go forward, like that's where it would let me open up the right side of that pitcher and I could still see continuation down lane. Where before I felt like it had to be a weak pin or like light surface so that it would go through the front. But like for me, like with my tilt, I still needed to read even though I'm separating my angles. So,
yeah.
But like not to the point where it's going to go forward by the end of the pattern. So like there's that give and take or play that I'm still trying to figure out with my own game on like what's too strong and what's too weak. And then
I feel like a lot of times it's where you have like success too. Like you can use stronger balls for longer than other guys can because you can actually float it down lane decent. And a lot of times I'll be like, we'll go back to the hotel or we'll go back to the B&B and I'll be like, Sterner was doing this. And he was like, yeah, well, I had to use a weaker ball because like I can't do that. Mine hooks early.
Right.
Even with a pin down layout or something like that, yours just tend to float through the fronts a little bit better, like you said.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much, like I used to think if my tilt is like a detriment. Now that I see, I mean, there's just more and more friction. The players were, the rev rates are higher. We're bowling on flatter things. So like, to me, that's a benefit because I don't have to fight it like I see the guys do. And then they're over in front of the bar return by game 3. I'm like, man, I got all this oil over here. Like, this is all right. I can deal with this. So
yeah, you're not having to worry about those like first 8 feet nearly as much as they are. Where like yours is like getting through it, and they're already in at 20 game 1.
Yeah, the only thing where it hurts me though is when I don't realize by the time I get to game 4 or 5 is that they're already been at 16 and at 20. So like I'll be like trying to scoot my way over there when like I need to get away from them or get ahead of them. Or to join.
I've been right of them, behind them, and now I need to make the big jump.
Yeah.
Instead of going like 4 or 5 at a time, I need to go like 20 the first time.
Yeah.
With a different ball, and then from there, I'll at least be close. Whereas instead of you're scooting 4 or 5, and like you said earlier, like it feels like you're wasting a couple frames just because you're so far off those first couple guesses.
And the other thing that's frustrating is when you think you move far enough and you make two of the best shots that you can never make again that block, and they do the right thing. You're like, oh, I'm good, and then you make the two marginal shots and they both split, and you're like, oh, I'm not even close. Like
Yeah,
it's
you're like,
inevitable.
I guess I wasn't good on the move here.
Yeah, yeah. So, but again, it's a learning thing, and it's cool to see the errors that I used to make in the past, so that I can actually do something about now, instead of just going to the hotel and be like, well, I just didn't bowl good today. Like, I don't know, I'll figure it out next block. Like that's not really a good mindset to go into the
Yeah.
next block when you already feel behind and defeated.
I'm behind. Maybe I'll just figure it out. Instead,
Yeah,
you're like, I actually have some decent answers out there.
yeah,
That's something I've never like, even as a lefty, when sometimes like it's just not there for you that week. And I'm not saying it's not there for you to make the cut. Firm believer, you can always make the cut.
sure.
If you do the right thing, lefty, righty, two-handed, one-handed, you can always make the cut.
Yeah, I would agree
But
with that.
it's a matter of like, yeah, every week it's not going to be Jason Sterner's week to win.
Sure.
Every week it's not going to be my week to win. But the weeks that they're not your week to win, hopefully you can finish, like you said, like 10th.
Yeah.
And then you give yourself a chance to make a great decision or a risky change in the last block, and all of a sudden you find yourself chasing the show.
Yeah, that's couldn't have said it better. But
Yeah.
it's taken a while to get my mind to that place. Like in the past, it was you would feel defeated and you check out, and you'd kind of be on autopilot. I would always be trying, but like you just feel like it's inevitable. Like you're just not getting there. But
Yeah.
it's a tough way to bowl like that for sure.
Yeah. I think I've always kind of just had that, the mindset of like, oh, you'll figure it out, or not you'll figure it out, but like, oh, what can we do to figure it out? Just because, like, for me, I've never been good at bowling. So like I always like, if I knew if I was gonna be good one day, that I would have to learn as much as possible when it wasn't going well. So I've just always had the like, okay, well, all of my friends are better than me, all of them.
Mm.
So I have to figure out a way to get better when I'm getting whooped by all my friends. So like throughout that, it's like, okay, new balls, new angles, new hand positions, new speeds. What works on this pattern? Take a mental note for the next time.
Yeah.
And luckily on the PBA tour, you get to take another crack at it the next block and the next block and almost like test your theory, right? Like,
Yeah.
did that work? Like, did I figure it out? Do I have a good game plan for the next time around? Or am I still a little bit stuck?
Mm.
And you can look around and see what other people are doing and get good ideas that way too.
Yeah, that's another thing, is using the play. I have a couple of guys that I like to watch what they do throughout the week, whether it's similar angles or ball roll characteristics or just how they like to see the pitcher, because that gives me information on which way I like to move going on what I'm feeling that tournament day or that evening block. So that if I am a little off, like, oh, okay, so and so's here, like, all right, maybe that makes sense, like whatever, XYZ. So
Yeah.
like, you can still learn even when it's not going well. One of the cool things that Sim would tell me is you can learn from your bad shots. And that was something I never understood until like the last 2 years, that I can make decisions, even if I didn't love the shot quality, if I just paid attention to what happened and where the ball went off the deck, I can make a better guess instead of going, well, I'll just wait till I throw it better. Okay, well, I'll just wait till I throw it better. And then 4 frames later, when you throw it better, you're like, oh yeah, okay, now I'm 3-2 behind it. So had
Yeah.
to split. And like that was a pretty cool little gem that he dropped on me, like about it. I think it was almost 2 years ago now. So like again, being in that positive mindset or always trying, there's always information you can get every shot to give yourself a better chance to.
Yeah. And just finding, like you said, those people that like, luckily I got a good group of friends who are always better than me, who have also always tried to help each other out along the way, where like Sam has always tried to help you out. It helps you get in that mindset of like, okay, well, let's try and figure it out, instead of just being like, well, that's it, over for me this week.
Check
Like,
out.
you'd rather have that mindset of, okay, well, yeah, it might be over this week, but we might see the same thing next week. So I better be ready for next week. At least that's how it always came for me. And if you
Yeah.
get the right group of people around you, like a Simonelli, or for me, like a Mitch or a Prather or a Kevin Williams, like those guys, for me, it's like, okay, like I can sit down at lunch and be like, that went horrible. This is what I did. Do you guys have any ideas? And they'll be like, yeah, well, these three guys bowled well doing this. Or I watched two of your shots. They did this. I just think you were doing the wrong thing. This is what you should do instead. And then I go back. I'm like, okay, yeah, I agree with that. Or let's talk about it for 20 minutes so I understand why.
Yeah.
And now that I understand, I can go apply, and hopefully, like you said, with the throwing bad shots, there's also like, I try and tell people, like, especially kids and stuff like that, I'm like, for the most part, you're about the same bowler every day.
Mm.
Like, about when it's going bad, I try and remind myself that when it's going well, I think I'm the best bowler on the planet. Um,
Yeah.
but when it's going bad, I'm like, I'm throwing it about the same as I usually do. It might be slightly different, but it's about the same. My matchup is just clearly very wrong, so it feels like I'm throwing it all over the place.
Yeah.
You might be, within a board and a half when you're throwing it good, and you might be within 2 boards when you're throwing it bad. It's just like finding the matchup where those 2 boards looks like you have 10 boards.
Yeah.
That way it looks a whole lot better.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. That's a good way to look at it for sure. I mean, that having those people around you, it really is a lifesaver because you can't do it alone. Like it's impossible out there to have success by yourself. Like you can't just figure it out on your own every block. It just doesn't. It'd be great in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of things, but it's just not. It's not real.
What was the biggest change when you obviously you went on tour a little bit ago, but what was the biggest change? Like for me, like you said, you can't do it alone. For me, I went high school bowling was team bowling, college bowling was team bowling. I got into bowling so late that it wasn't ever really a singles thing. And when
Mm.
I would bowl tournaments in college, like we'd pack a car with 4 or 5 guys and we'd all bowl on the same pair. And it was like we'd talk about what's going on and we'd talk about how you can get better. And it
Yeah.
was always a team thing. And then I go on tour and it was like, okay, guess what? It's you.
Yeah.
There's still a team helping you out. Like the guys at Brunswick, like a Chuck Gardner the first year I was on tour, and Eric and those guys helping me out all the way to now where it's like Dino and Mike are helping me out with Jason as well. Like all those guys, it's just a new team, but still, like you get down to it, you get onto the TV show, and it was like, hey, you have to sit in a chair over there and not talk to anybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, what was the biggest difference for you? Because you were a much better bowler growing up.
I think because part of my either stubbornness or my ego or pride, I would always just like, I'm going to figure it out on my own. So, like, not that I didn't listen to people, because I would listen to people and then I would go try it. And if it didn't work, I would be like, I would just dismiss it or whatever. But I was just always a big practice guy. So, I was always working on things and then go try to apply it at a regional or at a city tournament or a state tournament or whatever. And I'm not saying that's the reason I didn't go bowl in college, because I didn't want them to change my game, because they're depending on where I would have went, it probably would have been beneficial, because now fast forward to what I've learned the last 5 years, the biggest thing that was missing was the educational components. But then I felt like by putting myself in it and it's just me against the world, it taught me a lot more about myself and how I handled those ups and downs when it wasn't going well. And I also learned more about myself, I think, earlier in my career. And obviously, the spare game was crucial at that point when you don't understand what's happening front to back, left to right, what your tools are, what they're doing. You're just looking at shapes and just going off, experience based situations. So I would always kind of like just, it's me against the world and just keep going and try to figure it out. Good or bad, always kind of had an upbeat attitude about it. I never felt like it was, like there are times obviously where you're like, is this really for me? Like, I don't see any progress. And then you would win something, or something would click, and then you would have a couple good weeks in a row or a month, and you would find that confidence again. So without the education. So that was, I think, when I got out on tour, it felt like I made it. So like I can do this. And I guess that was how I used it as my fuel. So then when I got out there, then I had to learn like, oh shit, like I'm not as smart as I thought I was, but I'm a scrapper and my spare game's good. So I've got a chance week to week if I can guess right, or if I can fall into the right pitcher. But even that at times would get frustrating, because I felt like there's got to be something I don't understand or I'm missing, because I work way too hard physically to not be able to put the ball in the pocket and understand how to get the corners out or whatever. And again, without the understanding of what was happening and what needed to change, just like ball layout and stuff, it was tough. And I was too stubborn to go ask for help, because I thought I knew everything for my own individual character. But then again, right back to the whole point was like, you can't do it on your own. Like there's going to be you're going to go as far as you get, and then you're going to hit that plateau. I was just fortunate that every time I hit the plateau, I would either have a conversation with like Doug Kent or Rick Benoit or Chuck Garner or like a player like Bill O'Neill or Tommy. They would go, look, dude, like this is wrong. Like you're not seeing it right. Like you just mentioned a couple
and then
minutes.
all of a sudden, it
Boom!
clicks
Like,
for a
oh
couple
my god,
weeks.
yeah. All right. Well, I'm trying to hit a driver when I'm 60 yards out, or I'm trying to hit a sandwich 300 yards. Like those are analogies that, like, if I didn't know what my tools were, I would just physically, because that's all I knew, would try to make it work. And you can't force ball reaction.
But if I really hit that sandwich,
yeah. But how good are you going to do that?
If I thin that real good,
right,
I might reach halfway.
Yeah. So that it was eye-opening and frustrating to go, like, God, how many years did I waste just being stubborn? Like I could have went and got help, but who was it going to be that I gave my trust to? Because it was tough for me to let that down, to really understand that like they're genuinely trying to help me, or they actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah. So I got a couple questions here in the chat. Jeremy Mooney said that Sterner ran over everyone in the South.
Moondog.
P. Kyle 146 said thanks for coming on. Tony Champagne Jr. said very stubborn.
Yeah, two lefties. I don't know.
And then Jack Hendricks had a question for you. Well, Franco Choi said Atlanta's champion.
Let's go, ATL.
And then Jack Hendricks had a question. He said, what do you suggest for new bowlers regarding like getting some sort of education needed to start bowling better? Like you said, you had a lot of education recently that helped you bowl better, and that helped you maybe not even bowl better because like you were already a good bowler, but just understand a little more about like why things happen the way that they do.
The biggest educational component was the bowl U, like Brad Angelo and Rick Benoit. Like I remember in 2007 or 8 when I just got out on tour and Benoit was the rep, like he was already in the process of like putting all these things together that is bowl U. Like the terminology was different. And like, I just always clicked with him because he was able to just put me in the right place. And I didn't know what I was doing, but just learning like that someone was there was huge. And I could kind of see the results I wanted to. Fast forward to the last 3 or 4 years, I've been able to understand it more fully. I see why he was doing certain things, or putting a lot more service on my bowl at the night block versus the morning block, or things like that. The other thing was like, without that, like earlier, there wasn't just like YouTube. Like I couldn't just find out this information. Like in the last couple of years, there's definitely more like the content you create. There's more education out there on what's actually happening in a real life environment. Because before then, it was tough to find that. Like you would have to pick the brains of like players that came before you, if they'd be willing to give up that information, or like you would have to fall into like groups where like they do a lot more than you did, so you can grow from them. But the biggest thing for me was the bowl U, and having them explain it to me in terms that click with me. I think the biggest thing was it gave me like a system of operations. Like, these are what I have. This is what I'm looking at. Now let me go apply my game and my stuff to what is actually happening in a real life scenario. Yeah. So I would say that's where I would start. I know it's not just easy to like look them up and grab that, but other than that, I would think YouTube and like following like the stuff you put out and of that nature is huge.
Yeah, no, I would agree. There's plenty, like I think I answered a question in an email yesterday, and it was like, what do you think is the biggest difference between like 15 years ago and now? And I was like, I just think there's more, and it's like that with every sport. Like, if I was going to go and pick up archery, there'd be way more information now that I could just go look up on YouTube or go look up on Google than there was 15 years ago. Yeah. It's just the way that the world has kind of evolved, is like, there's just more information. I don't have to watch a video of someone do it. I can watch a video of someone who's very good, explain why it works or explain how to do it. And with whoever it is, if it's me, if it's Darren, if it's Brad and Kyle, if it's whoever it might be putting out something instructional. Like those guys are obviously have had so many lessons and so much instruction over the years and have proven that they could apply it to their own game, that
Yeah.
it's easy for them to relay some of that information across and say, hey, so to be honest, like just getting a good coach in your area or finding a good coach in your area that you can work with consistently, it's hard. But if you find a good one, like that's really all you need. Just
Yeah.
one good coach and make sure that they know what they're talking about. But like find a solid coach who can help you and then just ride it out.
Yeah, I would agree. I had one coach for like 10, 15 years until like, Brad and Rick kind of like took over the reins again. And that was my guy, and it was live or die, and he was able to teach me as much physical things and as much understanding because he bowled back on like the regional circuit back in the early 90s and things. So like the information that he would get from like his guys, like I forget who he said coached them, but it was just like passing down that information from player to
Yeah.
player generation. Other than that, it was, you weren't going to just open up a book and find how do you bowl and like what do you do and what are the moves and how are the breakdowns, and like I didn't even know that exist. I don't even know if that did exist 10 years ago. Like,
Yeah,
the
I was
only
just
books I remember is like Parker and Brian Voss had books.
yeah. I went to a Wichita State Shocker bowling camp before I went there. So it was probably like 2013, 2014. So probably like 10 years ago at this point. And they handed us this like thick 3-inch 3-ring binder full of like a detailed how to bowl. From there was like mental game chapters, there was physical game chapters of like the basics, what you should look for. Obviously, it's a little different for everyone, but like this is a great starting point for you to get there, get a crazy amount of information. It's all in a book, and here's how you can kind of learn it. It was wild. I was like, dang, I can't believe there's like this much information. I thought it was just like get up there, throw a ball, kind
of right.
Yeah.
I leave a 4-pin, the 2-1 left. This is what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and even then I was like, I didn't know why I 6-pinned. I just 6-pinned.
Right. Yeah. Now it.
I was like, I must have just missed in, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely yeah, and the more for me, the more I would see it white and black and not live in that gray as why it happened, the easier it was for me to like move week to week and just blame the physical thing or not understanding. But it was frustrating for sure when you just like why? Like I want to know why. Like there's got to be a reason why I'm 6-pinning or 4-pinning or flat 10 or whatever. Like it can't
I
be
wasn't
just
smart enough yet to know that there was an answer.
Yeah, right.
Tim Watson said, what happens when you have too much information? Because like obviously you seem like a guy who loves to have all the information and you can kind of go out there and decide what works for you. So what happens when you feel like there's too much?
I think, like you just said, it's like picking out the pieces that best suit you. Like, I mean, because there can be too much where you're like thinking about the lane surface and the bowling balls and like what's the oil and how does the oil break down? And like you could get in your head, I think, just trying to keep it as simple as possible, like a system of operations that you can follow, that when this happens, okay, here's my next option, or this is what I think, and then that's the next one. And then you kind of sort them out as best you can. There are some times where you wish there's more information. Like for me, the biggest thing is like, where am I going to, like the next pair, who played where and what did they do? Like that could be overkill, but then I feel like that gives me 2 shots to explore whether I need to go this way or that way. But someone may feel that as like, dude, that's like so much. Like, can you just worry about throwing a good shot first? Like,
Yeah.
So
I think everybody's different. Like a guy like you might be able to handle more information than a guy like me, where I'm like, okay, I need a ball, a spot to throw it, and a spot, like a place to throw it at the arrows and a place to hit down lane. You tell me that, I'll throw a couple shots and then we'll figure it out from there. Where like,
yeah,
I don't like knowing the surface or the pattern, or give me the length of the pattern. I don't need to know what the pattern is. I might take a glance at what it looks like and where the shape should be. But after that, like an HPL surface with a certain pattern might play way different than an HPL surface with the same pattern, just at a different center.
I agree.
Like everything could be exactly the same. And I could be in Indiana at one place and Vegas at one place, and I could play the gutter here and I have to play 20 here.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, there is a point where there's too much information where I'm like, the over analytical, you don't need to be over analytical, but I would always, like you said, I'd rather have all the information and kind of just pluck what I like rather than, and I've learned that over the years. Like, I would rather ask the question, you tell me the answer, and me say, that doesn't really work for me, or me say, yeah, I'm gonna go out and try that. And it's happened like plenty of times where I've walked back to Mike Wolf and I've said, hey, what do you think? I'm pretty lost. He gives me an off the wall answer, and I'm like, I'm gonna try this other thing first, and if what I think goes bad again, then I'll do it.
Yeah, right. No, it's crazy, but it's true. Like, and the other part of it, like that I've seen with too much information, but I like, is like the topography books. Like, I wouldn't think that topography could make that big of a difference. And you will chase your tail trying to outbowl that, when if you just could see it, like the golfers have like a green book or whatever. Like, if we could have that every week, that would be awesome. Like, to me,
That'd be cool.
you can figure out, why am I playing the gutter? Oh, why am I not playing the gutter? Oh, why am I in the track? Why am I not? You know what I mean? So like, that type of information I feel is crucial, where sometimes like the lane surface or the oil conditioner is kind of irrelevant, because you're still chasing the oil either way. And how the guys are going to move the oil around matters too, because even in the perfect world, if they're not playing where you want them to play, they're still moving oil around to where you have to navigate regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael Jump, by the way, said Jason is an amazing coach.
He's got one of our daughters on our team. Hey, Mike.
Oh, nice. Another one of these guys said, I still think it's get up there and throw it. Sometimes it is. Well, if you have it figured out, it is get up there and throw it.
Absolutely.
Like, get out of your own way.
I like to have that. So I like to think of all that stuff before I step on the approach. Like, so that when I do step on the approach, I'm going to get up and throw it. Like, all the things I've done before I step up to even get on the approach.
Okay, so what do you think about when you get up there? You're a slow bowler.
Well, I'd like to think I've sped it up in the more recent years, but
you definitely have.
The problem is literally that, like, I wouldn't have a structure or a plan. I'd be thinking about the shot before. So like, as I'm like getting set up, I'd be like, okay, where am I looking? Okay, do I need to throw this slower? Like, that's so much time I'm up there on the approach and thinking about it before I even go. So I like to do all of my thinking before I even get the ball off the rack. By the time I'm going through my pre-shot routine, I already know where I'm standing, where I'm looking at. Am I going to throw this with this rotation, that rotation, and how fast am I going to throw it? So that when I go just get up and throw it, then I just process what happens.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And you have to, otherwise you spend forever up there and then you might not make a shot as confident as you want to.
Right.
And Tim Watson said here, he said, information overload is definitely real for me. I find myself sorting through is like hand positions, ball reaction, ball speed, angle, the moon.
Right.
So, I mean, and it is real. Like you said, you kind of have to think about all this stuff. And a lot of that for me just comes with experience. Like for Tim, I mean, for us, we've bowled so many tournaments, so many different things. And like, at least for me, it's always very serious. I shot a video last week about how you can use league as like an elevated practice session. Like, okay, well, I worked on this week, or I went and practiced this, and now let's try and practice it and try and score at the same time. Like, am I ready to take this to a tournament, or do I need to keep working on it? And I mean, for a lot of that stuff, like hand positions, ball reaction, ball speed, it's always going to be something that you got to think about, and you'll have a couple options of what you can do. But at least for me, it's just like, the more you bowl, even if you've already feel like you've bowled a lot, the more you bowl, the easier it gets to make those decisions quicker. And sometimes you're still going to guess wrong, and you're going to guess right sometimes, and you're going to have to do things that you're not comfortable with, and it's going to work really well, and it's going to work really bad. But the more you bowl, the easier it'll get to figure out what usually works for you, what you need to work on, and the things that just work at certain places on certain patterns.
Right. I would agree with that. You know, I like, you know, you have your skill set, like, you know, maybe like, for instance, I always like to use golf because most bowlers are golfer. Like, say you work a fade more so than you do a draw. So like when you go practice, to me, I'm at a driving range and I'm working on rotation control, speed control, so that when I go to these environments, I'm going to do the things that I like to do first. It makes it a little bit more black and white before I got to start doing things. I'm like, oh God, like I need to be at 20 and I need to be rotating the hell out of it. Like not that it's like the in case of emergency break glass, but just so like I've exhausted all these options. I'm still two hits behind the scoring pace. I think I need to go this way. Like, let me work on what I was practicing the other day in practice.
Oh, absolutely. And
yeah,
I think that's the easiest way to do it too. Like whenever I go in practice, it's usually, unless it's right before a tournament, it's usually something I'm not comfortable with. I might not be great at because I'd rather do those things in practice, get a little better at them. So like you said, when you do have to use it, you're going to try and do what you like first. And if it doesn't work, or if you see that, hey, I got to rotate it a ton. Yeah. I don't usually like doing that, but it's just what has to be done today. Yeah. Good thing I practiced it this week.
Right.
And that's where, like I said, I like to use league as like almost that elevated practice. Like
sure.
I'm never going to go out there and average 255 in league. I might average like 240, but it'll be a lot of like 720 sets or 730 sets, like just trying to work on rotating it more with a smoother ball. And like, how do I make that strike? Is it a speed thing? Is it a different ball thing? What balls look good when I do this? Like, I'll try all those things in league because I know league is, for me, the best place.
Yeah. Well, it's not
Jeremy
hard for
said
most
you're probably
people.
up there on the approach, thinking about how much time you have to get sweet tea from Chick-fil-A.
Oh, I mean, I already know. Like, it's just a matter of when I get done. I've actually this season I haven't had well, at least let me think about this. I've gotten better at not drinking it. Like I've noticed, like even coffee, like drinking it later in the afternoon blocks, my ups and downs and crashes were like so extreme. So like to the T, and I've been 100% on this. Like it's been no coffee after 8 a.m. in the morning on the blocks, and I've noticed that my night blocks, when adversity hits, I don't feel the jitters and the certain things that would spike before when I felt lost. I can have a much more level head and make more clear decisions than I did in the past. And talking with Heather, like she explains a lot about how caffeine affects the body and whatnot. And I am a firm believer now, after doing this for 6 weeks, I can tell the difference in the night blocks that I used to feel back then, like even a year ago.
Yeah.
So, and sweet tea is the same way. So, but like once the tournament is over, then the sweet tea or then the coffee overload, it's right back on point.
I was gonna say, I noticed the coffee cup earlier before. I was like, are you a coffee drinker or not? Because I know some guys are like, I need coffee in the morning. For me, it's the opposite. I'm like, I need to stay away from coffee. I would love it, but it's like, I already am like high energy for the most part. So if anything in the morning, it's like a tea or something like that, where the energy isn't like huge spike, huge crash.
Yeah.
For the most part. Nick Smith, aka Brunswick, asks, how many black hammers have each of you drilled this year?
I actually have only drilled one. But I mean, obviously you're on the other side, so you may have to drill a couple. Not that I wouldn't want to drill another one, but like once I have a club, like a 3-wood that I like, it's hard for me to just drill another one and see where it's how much different is it really gonna be before then I'm like overthinking. Like again, what goes back to like, is there too many options? Then now I'm like, do I need to throw the weak one or the strong one? Does that need to have more surface or less surface?
Yeah.
So, I've just noticed that I've just used more surface on the black one. And again, I feel like I'm one of the guys with the urethane that I'm usually using it straighter. I'm not playing a lot of shape.
You're not hooking it. Whereas like me, I'm wheeling and dealing.
Yeah. So you might need more options on like layout choices.
Like I need one that hooks. I need one that I can play straight with. Yeah. And I might need 2 of each, just like, okay, this one hooks and I have surface on it. Maybe I have one without surface on it. This one is for straight with surface. This one is for straight without surface. So yeah, I've drilled like probably 5, 6.
Yeah.
But I've only 3 have like found a place into the bag. And it was, I drilled 2 and then I drilled a third and then I drilled a 16-pound one. And then I drilled another 15. Cause I was like, for me, the 16, like it's just hard. It's hard to throw for a whole block and not think to myself like, okay, the 15 was close enough where like for me, the 16-pound ball, I just like once a game, I'll just throw a shot where I'm like, didn't quite hit that as hard as I would have the 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put the 15 back in my hand the next game, and my rev rate like doubles.
All right. So
Because
you
I'm like,
feel like
wow,
you make up.
now my hand's really underneath it. It's like I was practicing last game with like a 30-pound weight, and this game I'm ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, I threw 16 up until like 2 years ago. And I didn't even know that there was that much different in diff in that ball.
It's only really, and even with the purple hammer, it was the same way. But the
Yeah.
15-pound purple hammer already hooked so much.
Yeah, so you didn't feel, I didn't feel like I needed 2 or 3. Not that like, but what you said, like maybe I have one surfaced up for later in a block or something. That was possible. But I talked to Dom about the 16-pound because I think he just went back to it. And how much, do you think it was worth having one or not? Because I felt like I was going to fight exactly what you said. Or am I going to miss a couple 2 shots a game that I'm looking for extra ball motion? Then I just have a better shot quality and still get the hit with the 15. So, but I haven't done it. I haven't pulled the trigger yet.
Not yet. What do we got? Paralysis through information. Appreciate you guys. Thank you from Tim Watson for answering his couple questions. Any tips for raising your ball speed but keeping your hands soft to the bottom? You're a coach.
Yeah,
I'm a coach
like,
sometimes.
To me, I like to break the body down into 2 forms. Like if we're talking speed, I'm thinking legs and how fast I engage my legs or how quick I get the ball into the swing. I'm not, the old me would try to compensate with the upper body being how I made speed and everything happen. But now if I'm trying to throw it harder naturally, but not have my hand get involved, I'm more focused on my feet and getting my tempo or pace up and just being quiet on the upper part of my body and just letting that be what's natural. Whereas before, like I felt like my legs were kind of engaged and then the rest of it came from pull from the top and trying to hit it all at once. Like to me, that was too many things trying to happen at once. So it's a lot easier to just set my feet speed a little bit faster than normal and then let the rest just kind of gradually happen. Like I feel like I can just do less work so I have, in a sense, more time or a softer hand.
That makes sense.
So, but if I'm trying to throw it harder and hit it, I feel like the same thing has to happen. But the biggest thing for me is I have to feel myself get stopped before I explode. Because if I don't feel myself actually get stopped, I feel like I can't repeat that like the rev rate within my margin for error. And my rotation or my repeatability with the rotation suffers as well. So like it doesn't really benefit me.
That makes sense. I mean, for me, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, if I want to throw it faster, just walk faster, push off a little harder. Like the last thing you want to do is try and rip it down from the top. And then like all of a sudden you get to the bottom at release, 2-handed, 1-handed. It's like, you don't want to make everything happen at once. You'd rather just relax and have the same release you always have.
Less is more.
And that brings me to my next question. We'll kind of wrap this up here short-ish. We've talked about kind of what bowling balls have been working. You talked about some layouts. We've gone over a little first half update, what's working, what's not working. But you have a little side gig going on. You and Heather, your wife, you guys are college coaches out there up in New York, right?
Yeah, Geneva, New York.
Yeah, and what college is that?
It's Hobart and William Smith, but the Hobart is the men's side and William Smith is the women's side. So we're the William Smith bowling team, or the Herons, if you will. So,
and with that, I feel like I get this question so often. Like, what do college coaches truly look for when they're either recruiting, or what do college coaches look for a bowler on their team?
What we like to look, I can't speak for Heather, but I think she aligns with most of what we see it the same way. We want to have a player who's got like the right mindset, and they may not be the strongest individual or most knowledgeable, but they're the easiest and most coachable. And once you give them something and they learn it, they want to work hard. Where I feel is like if you have that player who's like already smart or thinks he's smart and they're really good, it's hard to teach them anything, because when you're trying to teach them and it doesn't work, then it's just like, well, you don't know what you're talking about, So like, we look for the people in attitude and their work ethics and how they treat their teammates, I think, or how we think they would. We watch their manner. Are they kicking ball returns when it's not going well? Are they cussing out their mom and dad because they're trying to help them? Things like that. We're looking more at the individual character and what we think we see. And then the how good and how smart they are in their skill set is kind of secondary to us, because we know that we're confident to be able to give you those components if you're going to come in with the right attitude.
Yeah, and I feel like that also relates just to coaching in general. Like for me personally, like if I give a lesson and I see someone like giving up on what I'm telling them, I'm like, listen, I know what I'm telling you is solid information. Otherwise, I would preface it by being like, hey, I'm not really sure, but can you try this? But for the
Yeah.
most part, it's like, hey, if you do this, if you push the ball away a little further right, your swing will be straighter. I know it sounds weird, but that's what will happen, or whatever it might be. And then they do it twice, and they're like, well, my ball, and I'm like, I don't care about what your ball is doing.
Right.
I don't care about that. And like, if it's like a battle for an hour, I'm like, I'd rather just not give you a lesson. You can
Right.
find another coach that's going to agree with you and tell you that everything you do is correct and that you're the best bowler in the world. And
Yeah.
then that's fine. But like for me, I'm really like you said, like you're trying to give them all the information that they need, that they want, that is going to help them become better bowlers. And you want the bowlers on your team that are actually going to accept that and say, okay, those are the things I need to do to get better. I can go and do those things.
Yeah. And you are going to, like you said, it's not like, well, if you do this, this may happen. Like we know from experience that when you do these things, it may not happen immediately, but if you're open-minded, you are going to start to see them.
Yeah,
And
like over the years, you've taken 1,000 lessons, 2,000 lessons, maybe. Like hearing that information, watching it apply to yourself, looking at your phone after a video recorded and seeing the things that you apply to your game in that practice session, like you've done it probably hundreds more times over than they have even thought of doing.
yeah, for sure. Like overkill. Like I used to be like my hugest critic. So like, how can I make it better? How can I make it more effortless? Like, how can I duplicate shots the way I want to do it? And I would pull things apart, move things here, like you said, push the ball there, that, what works, what doesn't work. And then like when you coach people, like obviously everyone's like they have different limitations, like their body, they can't always do certain things. That's why we all throw it different. But like generically, once you get to being able to repeat it and hit the same target lines, once we can work with that, then you can just build in the information past the foul line, is how I like to, so like once we build the physical foundation to where we can quality B plus shot making B minus, add what's happening past the foul line, now we can actually bowl with 2 or 3 boards of miss room and start to see some results
and start hitting those 2 or 3 boards because we taught you the right physical
right.
game and all that.
Right. Absolutely. So, and it's tough because some people get it right away. You can have, and I'm sure you've ran into this, you can have the same 3 people tell you the same thing, but one says it in a different way that clicks, and the other 2, you like, he doesn't know anything. I don't know what
Yeah,
he's
that doesn't make sense to me at all. And then it's
Yeah.
like the same information in a different way. And it's like, oh, that clicks from 2 coaches ago that I had.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's what I was trying to tell you. But, I get it. It's tough.
Yeah, but no, I appreciate you coming on. We'll probably try and do this. I don't know if it'll be you every time, but it'll be me every time for sure. So we'll probably try and hop on and give you guys an update sometime next month, maybe when the season's over and we're headed home for the year. But yeah, I appreciate all you guys watching and sticking around. We'll take one more question because I saw a good one. No, it's a solid one. It's nothing crazy. Charles Hutcherson asked, what makes a PBA season successful for each of you?
Oof.
Yeah, I know. It's a good question. You could go and say win. You could say make money. You could say learn something new, whatever.
Man, that's tough. Mine's kind of changed over the years. I would say before it would be like, where did I finish in points? So like at the end of the season, was I in the top 24? Was I in the top 15 or 16? I would kind of equate it to that. Now to me, it's like, it's still that for sure. But like, how many times can I, like we talked about earlier, when you don't have it or you're just not, can you cash? To me, like if I could cash in every event or however how many times I can cash throughout the season, that's what I'm looking at as a good, successful season, because that means I'm learning even when I don't have it, I'm still able to get there and still give myself a chance. So, and again, that's going to help my results at the end of the year anyways, instead of like, oh, you really crushed them and like at this tournament and you're way up there. But the other 16 tournaments, you were like near the bottom. So I see it as like how I learned and evolved, and did I get better than the year before as a win or as a loss, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's probably a similar answer for me. I would say, obviously, you go and you look at the points at the end of the year and you say, okay, well, how was I? Like in comparison to the field.
Yeah.
And for me, I like to, it's a little different because I'm on the left side of the lane. Like I do like to rank myself amongst the lefties. How was I in comparison to the other lefties?
Sure.
Was I in the top 3 or 4, or was I in the 5 through 10 range? Hopefully you find yourself in the top 3 or 4. Hopefully you find yourself in the top 10 in points.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for me, successful, like you go out there, you learn a little bit, you see some sort of progression throughout the course of the season, and you find yourself in the top 20 in points. That's probably ideal for me. Obviously, you'd love to have a year where you win 3 titles, but winning is so hard. So I'd say, like, find myself somewhere in the top 20. At some point throughout the course of the year, give myself a chance to win, whether it's make TV or give it a run at a couple TV shows. Like, at some point, give myself a chance to win, because you might bowl 180 and win. You might bowl 260 and lose. You have no control over that. So if I could give myself a chance to win, finish in the top 20 in points and maybe the top 3 lefties, that would probably be like a successful season for me. But all of that comes with, okay, well, every tournament it got a little bit better mentally, or every tournament it went pretty solid, or I only had one tournament where I really fell apart, like mentally, where I couldn't really figure it out ever.
Yeah.
So for me, that's kind of the staple, and a very similar answer to you on like what makes a season successful, because it's hard to win.
Extremely
Like
hard.
it's next to impossible to win. If you look at the list of people who have PBA titles, it's few and far between in comparison to the amount of people that bowl the tournaments.
Yeah.
So give yourself a chance, finish up there somewhere, and survive and advance to the next season.
That's it. I mean, especially now they've got you on the clock, so it's every tournament is important, as it always is, but it's even more so now with things at stake and the way it's going.
Absolutely. But yeah, again, we appreciate all you guys watching here on YouTube. If you're watching here on Facebook, feel free to head on over to YouTube, click the subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube and you don't follow the Brunswick Facebook page, do the same over there. So thank you guys for watching. We appreciate you tuning in, asking some good questions, and we'll catch you in about a month.
All right. See you guys.